رأيت الناس ويدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمدك واستغفر إنه كان توابا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
President of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan on Youm-e-Istehsal, 5th August 2022. The message begins, and I quote: While marking 3 years of India's illegal and unilateral action on 5th August 2019, we honor the sacrifices of the Kashmiris in their just struggle for their right to self-determination. 3 successive generations of Kashmiris have rendered innumerable sacrifices in the face of India's relentless campaign of brutalization, using every inhuman tactic to perpetuate illegal Indian occupation. India's action of 5th August 2019 contravened several United Nations Security Council's resolutions, which stipulate that the final disposition of the state of Jammu and Kashmir will be made in accordance with the will of the people through a fair and impartial plebiscite, conducted under the auspices of the United Nations. India is implementing a brutal campaign of military occupation, land confiscation, and the influx of non-Kashmiris in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir (IIOJK), in violation of the UNSC's resolutions and international law, including the 4th Geneva Convention. The unabated Indian state terrorism includes the extrajudicial killings of more than 650 innocent Kashmiris since 5th August 2019, unprecedented restrictions on freedom of speech, fake encounters, cordon and search operations, custodial tortures and deaths, enforced disappearances, incarceration of senior Kashmiri leadership and young boys, use of pellet guns, especially targeting the Kashmiri youth, destruction and burning of houses to inflict collective punishment on the Kashmiris, and other methods of subjugation. But the occupation forces' ruthlessness has not been able to break the will of the Kashmiri people. Indian actions have been rejected by the Kashmiris, Pakistan, and the international community. The dire situation in IIOJK has been taken up by the United Nations Security Council 3 times since 5th August 2019, reaffirming that this is an internationally recognized dispute and its solution is firmly anchored in the implementation of the relevant UNSC resolutions. India's refusal to grant the Kashmiris right to self-determination has serious implications for South Asia and beyond. More than 1.5 billion people of the region deserve to see the dawn of peace and prosperity, which has been held hostage by the India in IIOJK. Like always, Pakistan will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Kashmiri brothers and sisters in their just struggle. We call upon the international community to take practical steps to hold India accountable for its gross and widespread human rights violation in IIOJK, and to facilitate a peaceful resolution of this long-standing dispute. The resolution of Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the relevant UNSC resolutions and the wishes of the Kashmiri people is the only way to ensure durable peace and stability in the region. The message ends. Thank you very much.
Remain incarcerated and their youth continue to be prime targets of the Indian occupation forces' indiscriminate extrajudicial killing through staged coordinated search operations. In fact, the Kashmiris continue to be deprived of their fundamental rights and freedoms. As expected, the Kashmiri people have valiantly defied the Indian campaign of brutalization against them. Pakistan has lent all possible support to the Kashmiris in pursuit of their just cause. Parliamentarians, journalists, humanitarian workers, international human rights organizations, and members of the international community have consistently raised their voice on the continuing grave human rights violations in IIOJK. India stands exposed before the world yet again as an aggressor and oppressor. It is deplorable that in IIOJK, India continues to flagrantly violate the universal ideals of human dignity, fairness and justice with complete impunity. The just struggle of the people of IIOJK to realize this right of self-determination, guaranteed under several resolutions of the UNSC, is being suppressed through brutal use of force by the Indian occupation forces. It is the indomitable will and courage of the Kashmiri people that has enabled them to withstand every Indian attempt to terrorize and subjugate them. India has failed despite all its massive coercive methods to extinguish their yearning for freedom and to crush their indigenous and legitimate resistance. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute has been on the UN agenda for over 7 decades. This long-standing dispute must be addressed and resolved with a sense of urgency and responsibility. As the siege of IIOJK enters its 4th year, the people of Kashmir look towards those who espouse the cause of fundamental rights and freedoms as well as human dignity worldwide for practical steps by them to bring an end to Indian atrocities. In fact, the world community must press India to halt its human rights abuses, reverse demographic changes, and India's illegal actions of 5th August 2019 in IIOJK to enable the Kashmiris to exercise their right of self-determination through the immediate implementation of relevant UNSC resolutions. For its part, Pakistan will continue to be the voice of our Kashmiri brothers and sisters who continue to render invaluable sacrifices and extend all possible support for the fullest realization of their legitimate rights. We have no doubt that durable peace and stability in South Asia can be achieved only through peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the UNSC resolutions and the wishes of the Kashmiri people. Message ends.
India took illegal and unilateral steps in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in a bid to change its internationally recognized disputed status and to alter the demographic structure of the occupied territory. Developments in the last 3 years have made it amply clear that India has been relentlessly pursuing its nefarious design of furthering demographic changes in IIOJK. It is doing so through repressive measures including outrageous gerrymandering to create Hindu-dominated constituencies at the expense of Muslim majorities, the issuance of millions of fake domicile certificates to non-Kashmiris, and modifying laws on ownership of land and property. These measures constitute nothing but an Indian attempt to obliterate the distinct Kashmiri identity and violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions and international law, including the 4th Geneva Convention. The presence of 900,000 troops has turned IIOJK into the most militarized zone in the world. The human suffering of Kashmiris inflicted through extrajudicial killings, arbitrary detentions, incarceration of the true Kashmiri leadership, and harassment and other gross violations of human rights are well documented and have been condemned worldwide. More than 650 Kashmiris have been martyred since 5th August 2019, including over 130 in the year 2022 alone. India's reprehensible treatment of Kashmiri journalists and human rights defenders has revealed that it will not hesitate to go to any extent for the perpetuation of its illegal occupation. India's illegal and unilateral actions of 5th August 2019 and those taken afterwards demonstrate sheer disregard of the international law, views of the international community, and the aspirations of the Kashmiri people. Indian state terrorism against the Kashmiris has been extensively documented through numerous reports and video evidence recorded and presented by human rights and humanitarian organizations as well as the international media. Over the past 7 decades, 3 generations of Kashmiris have waited for the world community and the United Nations to honor the solemn commitments made to the Kashmiris. The United Nations must live up to its promise of granting the right of self-determination to the Kashmiri people. Pakistan has always desired peaceful relations with its neighbors, including India. Unfortunately, India's actions and its subsequent machinations have vitiated the peace and security environment in South Asia. The onus remains on India to create a conducive environment for result-oriented engagement. This is essential for durable peace and stability in the region. The international community must demand an end to India's gross and widespread human rights violation in IIOJK. Reversal of the unilateral illegal action of 5th of August 2019, repeal of the draconian laws and implementation of the relevant UN Security Council resolutions in Jammu and Kashmir. On its part, Pakistan's ultimate objective remains the peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the relevant resolutions of the United Nations Security Council and wishes of the Kashmiri people. In this just cause, Pakistan will always remain in strong support and solidarity with the Kashmiri brethren till the full realization of their legitimate rights. End quote. The message.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening. It is wonderful to see our Pakistani and Kashmiri diaspora gathered here today to commemorate an occasion which is quite solemn in its nature. You have heard the messages from His Excellency, the President, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. अपने रिमार्क्स और अपनी तकरीर में मैं कुछ चीज़ों को आपके सामने हाईलाइट करना चाहती हूँ. I am very grateful to all the community leaders, women leaders, youth representatives who are here today because अपनी day-to-day life and activities में sometimes we tend not to be able to focus so much on issues that are of utmost significance to the diaspora, to the community, and to the Kashmiris as well as to the Pakistanis. I'm very grateful that all of you could make the time to be here with us today to join to observe what we call the Youm-e-Istehsal. It is to express our solidarity with the Kashmiri brethren and also to pay our homage to Kashmiri martyrs who offered the ultimate sacrifice of their lives in the quest for realizing their inalienable right to self-determination. Ladies and gentlemen, 5th August 2019 was a black and a day. It was a black day and a day which marked a very important and significant development, unfortunately not in a good way for the Kashmiris. 5th August 2022 marks the 3rd anniversary of India's illegal and unilateral actions and subsequent steps that were designed to undermine the internationally recognized status of occupied Jammu and Kashmir and to alter the demographic structure of IIO-JK. This was all in violation of the international laws and relevant UN Security Council resolutions on the dispute. Just to remind you and for the young representatives who are here, and I see there are 2 young girls, and I welcome you especially and thank you for coming to the Consulate to listen to something that is of extreme importance to all of us. So what happened on 5th August 2019 was that the Indian government revoked the provisions of Articles 370 and 35A of Indian Constitution, which had accorded a special status to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This was in contravention to several UNSC resolutions on the dispute and India's own commitments which had given to the people of IIO-JK and bilaterally to Pakistan. Not only has India reneged on its obligations and the solemn commitment of its leaders to abide by the UNSC resolutions and let the Kashmiris exercise their right to self-determination, it has unfortunately also unleashed a reign of terror and suppression, gross and widespread violations of human rights and international humanitarian law in an attempt to perpetuate its illegal and forcible occupation of IIO-JK. This is what happened on 5 August 2019, and the situation over the last 3 years has progressively gotten worse. Since that day, Indian occupation forces have unfortunately now killed more than 660 innocent Kashmiris in extrajudicial murders. Ladies and gentlemen, please think of the large number, 660 Kashmiris, men and women, in extrajudicial killings. This does not happen anywhere else in the world. And India has pretends to be a democracy, pretends to be a country where the rights and human rights of the people people are protected. So very important number I want you to remember, and I want you, when you go out, to be able to tell people that 660 Kashmiris have since been killed in extrajudicial murders. What more has happened is that there is now a sweeping ban on fundamental freedoms in IIOJK, civil liberties, and freedom of expression. Ladies and gentlemen, another very sad hallmark of the Indian aggression has been a spate of dubious and politically motivated cases against Kashmiri political leaders and their inhumane treatment in prisons. The recent sham trial of Kashmiri leader Yasin Malik on concocted charges and his prolonged incarceration has exposed the Indian agenda, has exposed its designs to stifle all the voices of freedom. Mirwais Umar Farooq also remains incarcerated. So practically the Kashmiri leadership has been put behind prisons, all sorts of allegations have been brought against them, and they are not being allowed any rights in the prison, so that they cannot lead the Kashmiris and they cannot give voice to their concerns and expose the true face of Indian aggression to the world. This is all a very heinous design, and once you go out, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take these thoughts with you and to think and to reflect and to communicate to others what's happening in IIOJK. Kashmiri women, and as a woman leader I say that with the utmost sadness, are facing unprecedented harassment and intimidation by Indian security paraphernalia. I would invite your attention to several human rights organizations' reports in the recent years, which have very categorically and in a very neutral, so-called neutral manner, exposed the real face of Indian aggression, especially targeting women. A very important fact is that an attempt to hide the atrocities of India, and India has in this context employed censorship and crackdown on civil society, human rights defenders, lawyers, journalists who are harassed and persecuted under India's draconian laws. Another worrying development, and you have heard my colleagues when they were reading the messages of the President and the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, coincides with March 31, 2020, and Delimitation Commission report of May 2022. These signify Indian intentions to change the demography in flagrant violation of all the international laws. As I said earlier, the purpose is to turn the majority into a minority. India must be held accountable for all the violations that it is committing, including the continued denial with impunity of the fundamental freedoms of the Kashmiri people. India must be held accountable. And here, ladies and gentlemen, the role of the international community and the role of the diaspora and the role of Pakistani Americans becomes extremely important. Unfortunately, the reticence of international community is a question mark over the international conscience. The ideals of democracy, of morality, of justice in IIOJK are being sacrificed at the altar of economic interests and geopolitical considerations. A very important point for all of you to consider. It is economic considerations, geopolitical games that are being played, which have made the better part of the world turn a blind eye to what's happening in IIOJK, and this has to change. Therefore, on this day, Pakistan strongly urges the international community to call upon India to end its gross violations and to revoke its illegal and unilateral actions of 5th August 2019. The Kashmiri and Pakistani community in the US and across the globe is commemorating the 3rd Youm-e-Istehsal by organizing various activities. आप लोग खुद अपनी communities में, and from the platform here of the Consulate General of Pakistan, we are making every effort. The community at large is aware has the relevant material and has the right approach in exposing what's happening in IIO-JK. In the past, our Kashmiri diaspora in the US has impressed upon the members of Congress, civil society, think tanks, and US intelligentsia to take cognizance of the deteriorating human rights situation in Kashmir. I would request and urge that we need similar consistent efforts in this scenario as well. We need to redouble our efforts, whether we are in schools or colleges, and whether we are entrepreneurs or businessmen, or we have these links with policymakers in the US. We need to assert ourselves. We need to make this a priority issue. We request the government of Pakistan also request the US government to call upon India to immediately halt its gross and systematic human rights violations against the innocent Kashmiris, including extrajudicial killings. Ladies and gentlemen, on this day we pay rich tributes to the struggle and sacrifices of our Kashmiri brothers and sisters, and we assure them that Pakistan will unambiguously and steadfastly offer all its support for their realization, for the realization of their right to self-determination. Let me also bring another message to you from Pakistan. Let me tell you that this support for the Kashmiris is based on a complete unanimity and national consensus. And this has been fully displayed across the country today and showcased by several activities and diplomatic outreach by Pakistan's diplomatic missions abroad, alongside the Kashmiri and Pakistani diaspora. From the Consulate General of Pakistan in New York, we have continuously strived to work for this cause. My message to you, dear brothers and sisters of this day, is to stay engaged, to highlight the atrocities, to inform your interlocutors of the facts on ground, and to continue to work for this great cause. कभी आपसे बातचीत होती है तो पता चलता है कि कुछ होप थोड़ी कम नज़र आती है बातचीत में कि जी 70 साल हो गए, 75 ईयर्स हो गए और इसका कोई नतीजा नहीं निकल रहा, हम आगे नहीं बढ़ रहे, शायद हम पीछे की तरफ जा रहे हैं। तो आप सबसे मेरी ये दरख्वास्त है कि जब अक़वाम अपने हकूक़ के लिए आवाज़ बुलंद करती हैं और लड़ती हैं और एक कंसिस्टेंट कैंपेन शुरू करती हैं, तो हो सकता है कि कुछ टैक्टिकल रिट्रीट हो किसी वक्त और कुछ स्ट्रेटेजिक गोल्स को हासिल करने के लिए, लेकिन हमने अपने हिम्मत को, अपने जज्बे को बुलंद रखना है, क्योंकि ये कॉज ऐसा है जो कि ना पाकिस्तान उस पर से कभी पीछे हटेगा इंशाअल्लाह ताला, और ना ही हमारे कश्मीरी बहन भाई कभी इसको एक्सेप्ट कर सकते हैं। सो आपस में बातचीत कीजिए, अपनी यूथ को और यंग जनरेशन को इसमें इंगेज कीजिए। Consulate General of Pakistan in New York in the last 3 years, हमने जब भी कश्मीर की डेज़ को कमेमोरेट किया है, तो हमारी कोशिश रही है कि हम इसमें वैल्यू ऐड करें, इसमें नए लोगों को इंगेज करें, इसमें यूथ को इंगेज करें, इसमें वो कश्मीरी हज़रात और ख़वातीन जो शायद पहले कभी कॉन्सुलेट जनरल नहीं आती थी, उनको शामिल किया जाए, और ताकि हमारी आवाज़ बुलंद हो सके। यहाँ पर हो सकता है मैं सबका नाम न ले सकूँ, लेकिन मैं सबको रिकग्नाइज़ करना चाहती हूँ। सीमी साहिबा हैं यहाँ पर, हमारे राजा राजा रज़ाक साहब बैठे हैं, मोहम्मद जान हैं, आसिफ हैं जो कि कम्युनिटी में बहुत वाइब्रेंट हैं और हर मौके पे पाकिस्तान के कॉजेज़ के लिए शामिल होते हैं।
First of all, I'm not going to take any time. I want to give a chance to other young leaders to speak and what they are here for. Just want to take 2 minutes. First of all, I want to thank every single one of you that are here. I know it's a busy weekend, and especially in the evening to get to Consulate is not easy. And I want to thank every single one of you. Madam Consul General, I want to thank you and your staff for hosting this event, and I really appreciate it, and you taking your time to honor Kashmiri. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Kashmir is a piece of heaven on the earth, and everyone knows that. Allah gave this beauty of land but inhabitants of Kashmir have been suffering from slavery since 1947. They are becoming victims of hostile Indian army. India is committing war crime, but United Nations and the rest of the world are silent. This is not a silence, this is a support to crime. They are blind and deaf. Today we gather here to tell the entire world should rise it, voice for Kashmiri and their freedom. Kashmir issue will be resolved soon. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have faced so much, but peace upon their strength and patience. To show the support to the people of India occupied Jammu and Kashmir and let them know they are not alone. We honor this day to show Kashmiri people in their heroic struggle that we care about them. And they have faced 7 decades of extreme human rights violation, abuse. This is time that all the world should realize that Kashmir was not a part of India and it will never be, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.